I'm here, Bob.
What's that?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
It's listed under Joy.
Oh, okay. Never saw that one before.
Yeah, she's the one who sets all this stuff up.
Okay. Do we know if Joe Carbone is coming in and Michelle? I know Michelle said she was coming in.
Not sure about Joe. I know Debbie could not make it.
Okay.
Well, if it's any
Right.
consolation, it's only 52 degrees here right now.
Yeah, thanks for that, John.
That's probably 78 where your dad is.
Yeah. All right, we'll get this meeting started. Like I said, the president, Kevin Peters, he's not going to be able to pop in tonight. He's been working 24/7. And then also Paul Rockwood, he's not going to be able to attend tonight. So he's got me running the meeting. Paul has an issue, a family issue with his mother, so he's not going to be available. So with that being said, I'm going to open up the meeting. This is a special meeting to hear about how the hydro raking went, some insight about it, and where we've gone with this. I'll open this up for to the Lake Resource Committee, the chairman, Bruce, to explain what happened, and then we'll let Larry Kovar give his detail of how the project went, and then we'll open it up after that for a short period for questions and answers, and that's about it. So, Bruce, you want to take over from here?
Yeah, just a brief synopsis, because I think most of it will be covered by Larry. This fall, we started a hydro raking project. We started it in late October. Had been planned on for several years and looked into. We had a couple of meetings, including public meetings at the pavilion, going
Can you stop
over
that?
what everybody was looking for.
Can you stop that?
Can anybody that's not talking mute their connection so that Bruce can so nobody overtalks Bruce?
Do you want to listen to the meeting?
Oh, why didn't you tell me?
Tom, can you mute yours, please? Because you're talking over when Bruce tries to talk.
Well, have to stop it anyway. Okay.
So we decided to go ahead with the project and contracted with Larry Kovar of Aquatic Analysis to do the hydro raking. The project took 6 days for what we accomplished. And at this point, I think I'll just let Larry come in and explain the whole project and how we came up with the idea to do it, and then go over the details of the project, and I'll throw in any comments if I need to along the way. So I'd like to introduce Larry Kovar. He's the president of Aquatic Analysis, and he's the person that spearheaded this project for the lake. So Larry.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be able to talk to everybody about the hydro raking restoration project that was performed on the lake this past fall. Just give you a little bit of overview. First of all, how much time do we have?
If you could keep it to, I'd say, maximum a half hour.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk a little bit on the fast side. I don't normally do that, but just to cover all the bases. So the fall of, I would say late summer, fall of 2020, I was called to come to a committee meeting, board meeting. I'm not sure if it was a committee meeting or board meeting, but there was board members present there. We met outside the office in the pavilion. It was in the evening, and discussed the survey reports that we performed on the lake during the 2000s. And towards the end of the season, end of the presentation, some talk was coming around about doing some restoration work, so possibly hydro raking on the lake. And we briefly talked about it. Just give everyone here who's listening to this, this is the second hydro raking project that was performed on Crandon Lake. At the time they asked what could be done. I told them what we could be doing. I said the best thing to do would be we'll send you a proposal for implementing a hydro raking project in the spring of 2021. And from that, the best thing would be to go out, look at the areas that the association would be interested in hydro raking with my input on top of it, and go out and perform a probing survey of the lake, of the proposed areas. So the probing survey entailed, and we did this late summer. Bruce and I went out on the lake, brought one of our airboats. We used a PVC, 10-foot PVC pipe, calibrated in 1-foot increments. The reason we use PVC pipe, it's light. We can feel the bottom versus like a steel pipe. You can't feel the organic material. We went out to the areas that were designated to do the hydro raking. Initially, it was going to be the entrance cove of the association, doing the northern shoreline of the entrance cove. A couple houses, 2 houses to the east side of that, 2 houses to the west side of the entrance cove, and look at the lily pads in the center of the entrance cove and present in the entrance cove, and pull out the lily pads by the roots. From there, we headed over to the Ballfield Cove, which is a cove in the northwest portion of your lake. We started out by the inflow coming in from the swamp area, Bear Swamp coming in. We went to the northern shoreline, we probed that area. We did a shoreline area. We came around the western shoreline, the northwest shoreline, to the first home along that shoreline. Then we came out, we looked at the lily pads throughout that cove, probed those areas. We then headed southwestern portion of that cove. You have an inflow stream that comes in, and I looked at it on Google Maps. I hope I'm correct on this, but it was just north of where we're on West Shore Drive, just north of Logwood Trail. There's a stream that flows into the lake from the West Shore. We probed that area. We probed the lily pads around that area, and then we proceeded down to the southwestern portion of that cove. There's a small little cove at the very end of that western shoreline, at the southern end of that Ballfield Cove. We probed that area. Then we came out to the mouth of the cove, and we probed the lily pads in those areas. The probing revealed basically Bruce and myself, both, I operated the airboat. I was probing for a while. Then I handed the probe over. I asked Bruce if he would want to do some probing, so he probed also. So the outcome of that probing revealed that where the majority of the lily pads were present growing, the lake bottom, okay, the hydrosoil on the bottom was very firm. Okay, firm where you're getting maybe inches of organic material on top of it. Otherwise, it was very firm. We found around the shoreline area, there were a couple inches, I would say probably 6 inches, 12 inches of organic material around those areas that we probed. We found 3 locations in the northwest portion of the in the Ballfield Cove. We found 3 areas that had a significant amount of organic material built up in the lake bottom. Those 3 areas were, the first was approximately around 100 feet from where the inflow from Bear Swamp flows into the lake. About 100 feet offshore from there, there's about an area about approximately 50 feet by 50 feet of an area that had about a foot and a half of organic material. It's pretty deep of organic material in that area. So organic material, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, organic material is living material that has died, decomposed. Leaf litter is also been considered organic material, but there's different stages of that decomposition. When it turns into black organic mud, that's the breakdown of those leaf litter. So we looked at that area that had about a foot and a half area, a foot and a half depth of organic material. Down by the inflow stream by Longwood Trail on the west shore, okay, that was the second area that we saw a significant amount of organic material. And again, that also was an area about 20 feet by 20 feet, maybe a little bit longer. Let me just check my notes here to see what we had. Just give me a second here. It was an area of about 30 feet by 30 feet, but it had about a foot and a half organic material, very close to where the inflow comes off land, comes into the lake. There's a delta of sand and cobbles from the erosion from stormwater coming in. We're not allowed to touch that. With New Jersey DEP land use, with hydroraking, there back in the 90s when we started doing this on lakes, they allowed us to come in and take out living and decayed plant material and incidental sediment. So we can take out some soils, some rocks, but we can't go in there and dredge that sand material out of the lake. So we stayed on the outside perimeter of that, and we got a lot of organic material in that area. Then on the southwestern cove, and it's close, it's still on West Shore Drive, but where Bassett Lane intersects, where West Shore Drive intersects, if you go a little northwest of that, there's a little cove right in that area. In that area, we probed that area, and that area also had an area about a foot and a half of organic material present. That area is around 20 feet by 20 foot of an area. So those were the three areas that after probing the area, I was talking to Bruce that we're gonna have to change our strategy around, and what we're gonna do is really target in those areas where we had significant amount of organic material. Bruce was talking about the goal was really initially was to go after the lily pads, dislodge them from the roots and pull them up and then scoop them out and take that organic material out. So I told Bruce, we'll give it a shot. So what we did was on October 15th, we had our hydrorake or aquamog launched into the lake. We had our harvesters launched into the lake. And what we ended up doing was on our hydrorake or aquamog, we have several different types of attachments. When we put it on, because the lake bottom was very firm, we had a root grapple attachment, which is 3/8 inch steel, plated steel, hardened steel. And we can dig into, it's meant for going on land and digging tree roots up, like with an excavator or a bobcat. That's what it's meant for. So we use that on certain types of projects to really dig up the bottom. So we came out with that lake on the 15th of October. We went out there, we spent 3-4 hours. We went to the lily pads. We tried pulling the lily pads up, and what was coming up was very little organic material, a lot of sediment, hard sediment, and the roots were breaking in little pieces. So the good news was we also brought one of our weed harvesters on board. The weed harvesters are going to be used as a transport vessel. They're going to be loaded with the organic material. In this situation, since the material was so firm and we're breaking the lily pads, all the harvester did was basically used as a skimmer. So as the roots were coming up, we're skimming it. So what was happening is we're pulling the lily pads up by the roots, but the amount of material, biomass coming up was very small. So we spent about 3-4 hours on the lake doing that. Just give you a heads up, we did that as a courtesy. You guys have been a loyal client of ours. Our office is located in Stillwater. I have a lot of buddies of mine and families that live on your lake and in the association. And I felt that, you know what, being neighborly as a small business will give you a courtesy on that. So that work for 3-4 hours was basically on us to do as a learning curve, because we never did this on your lake out in those areas, to see what kind of efficiency we would have. So when we got done with that, I talked to Bruce. I called Bruce up and conversed with him, told him what our findings were. I was a little disappointed that, you know, we weren't getting the plants up. So the goal was then, before we started the following week, was we have a clamshell rake that we normally use for hydroraking, for taking out organic material. It's a clamshell rake. It's got a flat edge on both sides, so it doesn't have the teeth on it like the grapple. So we put that on, we got that all set up, and then when we're all ready to start the project, we went out into the lake where the lily pads were, and we tried with that type of rake to see if we can scrape the top of it, get the pads and the roots. And the same thing happened. We're just getting the plants breaking apart the roots. So when I talked to Bruce, we were talking about, I said, well, let's go to the areas that we have the most organic material. So we started at the southwest cove and started hydrating that area. And we're pretty effective. We're taking out good amounts of organic material. Because of the distance, I estimated it was about just shy of about a half-mile travel on water from, oh yes, so those are the areas that we're hydrating. Let me backtrack a little bit. So what we also did was at the entrance cove, we got authorization to set up a staging area in the entrance cove. So I contracted with a buddy of mine, and we pulled out one tree. We took out some of the topsoil. We put down some stone to make a landing area, so we could put a steel pan on the edge of the water and land that we can unload the hydraulic material into. Between the water and the opposite end of where the pan sat, on the other end of that, we had an excavator in that location. On the other, behind the excavator, was a tandem dump truck. So the goal was to hydrate the material, bring it on a transport vessel, a weed harvester, okay, paddle with the weed harvester over to the staging area, convey the material off the harvester into the steel pan. And once we got the material into the steel pan, the excavator was then squeegeeing out the pan, squeegeeing out the organic material, turning 180 degrees, loading the tandem truck. Okay, so that was the procedure. That was the operation. So anyone who didn't know what was going on, how it was being performed, that's how it was being performed. So when we did this initially, I proposed to the association to bring the Aquamog with whatever attachment we would need. Okay, one weed harvester as a transport vessel, a pan, an excavator, and 2 tandem trucks. So what we ended up doing was we had 2 tandem trucks there. I ended up looking at it. I said, you know, you guys are so close. We brought a second weed harvester.
Larry, you already went through this before,
When?
previous to all the meetings and so forth. You're going through everything that you've already done.
April, please.
No, I'm
April,
not.
please mute,
No.
because we're going, listen, April.
No, just go.
April, there are other people that have not been part of the meetings. He's going through the whole thing. Wait until he is done with his spiel, and then I will open it up to the public and other board members for concerns. Let Larry get through this.
I'll do as quick as I can. Okay. So what we end up doing was launching a second harvester because of the distance that we're traveling where we're hydrating in the ball field cove was approximately a half mile long. So that's a half mile travel from loading up the hydraulic material to unloading the material at the staging area, and then traveling another half mile back to the area to get filled up again. So bringing one weed harvester on site was not going to be very efficient. So we brought a second harvester on site to do that. When one harvester was loaded up, it took off, it motored to the staging area to get unloaded. Then the second harvester was being loaded up with the material. When the operator was by the hydrate waiting for the other two equipments to come back to get loaded up, he's basically making a pile, scooping stuff up to make a pile so when they came, they can be loaded up. So we started with area 3, which was the southwest portion of the lake. We went to the second site on the west shore where the inflow stream came in. We did that area. And then we proceeded up to the main entrance cove, the main cove, the main inflow at the ball field cove. Those are the 3 areas that we targeted on. That's where we got most of the organic material. The majority of the organic material came from. Talking to Bruce every day that we worked on, Bruce was informed of the operation, some of our challenges that we had, and some of the success stories that we had. From there, basically, Bruce said we have to get the shoreline areas. So I didn't pick these shoreline areas. The association picked the shoreline areas that we're going to go to. So again, the shoreline areas were the shoreline of the ball field cove, the first house on the west shore, the first house on the east shore of the inflow, and then we went over to the entrance cove. And what we ended up doing was the entire northern portion of the entrance cove, that whole shoreline. We did 2 houses on the east side and 2 houses on the west side. The last day of the project, at the very end of the project, Bruce came up to me and we had a little extra time. So we started working back in the Bullfield Cove. He asked me, can we do another house? And it was about maybe 3 houses south from the northwest corner of the entrance cove. I went over there. There was an older woman that owned the property. We ended up doing that shoreline area, and that's what we ended up doing for the project. So that was it on an overall what we did. So right now I would answer any questions that you have.
All right, I'm gonna try this in an orderly fashion so that everyone doesn't open up their mics and speak all at once, because all we're gonna do is to get a ton of feedback. So I'll go down the list. One person each time. Darlene, open up your mic. Do you have any questions or comments?
Yep, I did see them doing the work and I saw them at the other end, but I did see in the notification that this side by the dam on, I guess the other side, opposite side of my house was gonna be done. And I didn't see them. I don't know if they did over there. I'm not sure which is northern or south or northwest or southwest or whatever, but I don't know if it was done in front of me or anywhere around, because I know there's a lot of weeds along the dam area in the summer, and some of them are very odd looking.
Larry, anything done over by the dam?
Along the dam area, we were not doing that. When you say weeds, we weren't going after weeds. That wasn't part of the plan. The only plan was, the only plants we're going after was water lilies.
Okay,
In the areas where we talked about, we had really good organic material. In those 3 areas, there were lily pads there. We were able to remove the lily pads along with the organic material. But I followed the lead of Bruce Allen, who's on your committee. He was the chairperson of this committee. He told us what shorelines to do and what homes to do. Okay, I didn't pick those areas. That was out of my, I didn't make those recommendations.
Okay,
Okay,
Bob,
thank-
could I add to that?
Yes, Bruce.
Lorraine, 2 things with that. Originally, we were thinking of doing that area that you're talking about, which would be on the eastern shore by the dam, so completely across from you where that first house there is. And we were also planning on doing a little section by the east beach. they were at the low end of the priority list. And we were only going to do that if we had enough time left with the project. And the way the project went and the way we were concentrating, those areas were, because we didn't have the time and they were not as critical as the other parts of the lake that we did.
Norm, do you want to open up, do you have anything? No, okay. Tom Murphy, do you have anything? If you do, open up your mic.
I don't have anything right now.
Okay. John Johansson?
Yeah, Bob, I don't have anything right now either, but I guess I'd like to understand what we're gonna do about lily pads during the, during this season too.
Yeah, I know that's one of my questions that I have is hearing the reports that we were getting back that the attempt to pull the lily pads out didn't get planned. We could be potentially worse shape with lily pads coming into this next year than we have been in the past because of the way that project went. Larry, can you confirm that, or can you enlighten us on that?
Yeah, at my end of things, I heard about the lily pads, but I lost a lot. You're broken up in the video. Can you just kindly repeat that? So I can,
Okay.
I want to make sure your whole question.
All right. The feedback that we were getting to the board was how the lily pad were coming out, that we could be in worse shape going into next year with lily pad problems than we have been in the past because it didn't go as planned.
Okay, you're not going to be any worse shape than you were in the past. Lily pads grow. The good news is that with the lily pads, the way they grow, the bottom is so firm that it's going to take time for them to spread. So our goal, our strategy for 2022 is the lily pads will be fully emerged around the middle of June. Okay, some of them will come later in the season, but most of any lily pads that are going to emerge to the surface of the water will be emerged the middle, June 15th. They'll all be at the surface. At that time, what I want to do is come aggressively with an aquatic herbicide and spray those lily pads. Once the lily pads are sprayed, the chemical is going to get down to the root system and kill the entire plant, the root system. So that's our strategy to do. What I like to do is work with Bruce in those areas. I know we're looking at hydrating a lot of them, but I want to see which ones you want us to take out and which ones you want us to leave. Because I know many years ago I was at a meeting and there were a lot of fishermen that were upset that we'd taken all these lily pads. So we have the capability of taking every water lily pad out of your lake in those areas. I want to make sure that we work on this to see exactly which ones we'll do. When we treat, you're gonna have to give them about 3 to 4 weeks, and then the plants will be basically submerged and they'll be dead.
Okay, because I know a lot of the concern that I hear through the lake. I was born and raised here, so I've been on this lake for 56 years. And in this lake where it's, for years, it was never treated. When Walsh owned it, Barish owned it, the lake was never treated. Never had any issues that we've had over the last, I'd say 15 years. It's gotten really bad that we're being overrun with the lily pads, where the lakefront properties, they can't even use their lakefront anymore. And I know that is a big concern. I think that was a big part of what the expectations of the hydro raking was to remove some of the muck in the matter and also try and get the lily pads. I understand the lily pads didn't come out, but the way we're treating the lily pads right now, we're starting to be overrun, where you used to see them just down in the cove areas. Now you're starting to see them out in front of the beaches a lot more. Out in front of my dad's house, never started seeing them until maybe within the last 10 years. And now it's getting a lot worse out there. So the lily pad problem is getting worse every year.
So what I'm happy to say is that now we know that we couldn't hydrorake them. The reason we didn't treat them last year, but the goal was to get in there in the fall and do it. So now we're still our goal is to get the lily pads under control. We're changing our strategy around to basically go in with aquatic herbicides. One other note, I'm going to divert from this answer a little bit, but one of the concerns that I have is when we're hydroraking, or right before we're hydroraking, we had a hurricane event. It was a significant rain event that we had. I came back by the lake to check things out. I was amazed. I never saw it in all the years working on your lake, living in Stillwater, driving all summer long. I never saw this happen before in my career. The amount of water that was coming in from the swamp, coming into the inflow of the Ballfield Cove, I was astounded by the flow of water, the force of that water, the velocity of that water that was coming in. So what I'm trying to let you know is part of my goal is to think about it over the wintertime, what we can do to put up some type of catch basin or net system. So every time you have this rain event, okay, any type of lily pads that are coming in from the swamp are coming in and basically reseeding into your lake. When that water comes ripping into your lake, right around the inflow of that stream, the mouth, all the heavy material, all the sands and the rocks and stuff like that settle out there. Out where we hydrorate was a lot of organic material. Those lily pads were getting pushed out because it's so soft of a bottom. It was getting blasted out there from a current of the water, and they're probably spreading that way. So I'm happy we hydrate that area, but I'm also looking at the long term with these storm events that we're having. I'm just concerned about every big storm we have, about looking at that and seeing what kind of debris is getting washed in from the swamp area. But the debris I'm talking mostly about is the roots of the lily pads. So I hope I answered your question. I was looking more at the long term also for that inflow stream. So just leave you with this. I know we're not going to do it. I'm not done right now, but we have to come up with some type of control mechanism to filter out that water that's coming in from that stream.
Bob, I have a question.
Yes, Tom.
On this lily pad thing, we're not talking about eliminating all the lily pads in the lake, are we?
We're not talking about eliminating all of them, but it's getting to the point where the whole lake is starting to get overrun with them. So
Understood.
it has to be done. A balance between keeping some and getting rid of a lot, because if you look at Mecca Lake that feeds our lake, that feeds the swamp and feeds our lake, Mecca Lake up there is almost completely overrun with lily pads. If you look down at the lower lake, you could pretty much walk across the lower lake on the lily pads. That's how bad it is. And if something's not done, our lake's going to turn into that.
I understand that. I'm just trying to make sure that we're not talking about taking them all out and then, really adversely affecting the fishery.
Hey, Tom, this is Joe Carbone.
Yes, Joe.
As a member of the committee, we've been meeting towards the end part of last year, or a little post and pre the hydro raking. I think the committee members, Larry mentions talking with Bruce all the time. Bruce is basically a talk piece chairperson of the committee. So I think the vision here is to get members of the committee from all walks, boaters, fishermen, so forth and so on, so we can eliminate any kind of conflicts of eliminating all the lily pads, no lily pads, this or that. This way we can come to some kind of a reasonable reason from all people representing the uses of the lake. So that's looking forward to, working that issue as well.
I agree with that. That's good.
And
Okay.
just on a quick note, so we're talking right now, it's January. We have a long ways off before we start implementing any type of treatment. But just give you some food for thought. Once the lily pads are up in June, what I like to do is, just like I did with Bruce, okay, I took time out. Again, we didn't charge you on the survey with Bruce, probing survey. But what I'm looking at doing is going out, having the committee go out. There's plenty of pontoon boats you have. In the areas maybe where you want to leave the lily pads, you put a water jug down with a cement block, like a brick down, you tie it off it. Where those are, we leave those areas. Whatever is going to be easier to do, then I go out with Bruce. Bruce has a drone. We can shoot the drone, the photos. If Bruce doesn't mind doing this, we can shoot from the air, shoot ads. So everyone's on the same page. You know, what's going to be removed, what's not going to be removed. I have a clear path what we're going to be doing, and then we can implement it. So, you know, we're right road from you. We can do this. Once we get this all in order, we can implement it right away. So I just want to let you know, that's what I'm looking at for communication. Make sure we have really good communication on this.
Okay, going down the list again, Carrie, I don't want to mess up your last name, starts with a D, Dauerheim?
Yeah, that's okay. Good job, Bob. It's actually Bill McCann. For some reason, my daughter's name and account popped up here, but I appreciate the effort. And, you know, it's funny, I'm listening here and, you know, I'm probably the biggest complainer whiner about the muck over the last couple of years and the weeds a little bit. You know, I like to shoot Bruce an email every now and then when I'm out in a boat and start to see the weeds getting a little problematic with the algae. But I'm just a little confused because I thought the project was meant mainly to deal with the muck, with the weeds as like a secondary option. And the reason why I say that is because the weeds can be treated with the chemicals or products he uses, you know, relatively easily. The muck was a main issue for many of the areas, particularly for me in the Bullfield Cove. Now, you know, a couple of years ago, they had staked out some areas where they were going to do a similar project, the hydro raking in that Bull Cove area. And, you know, what seemed like miraculously after a big storm, it was determined that all the muck spots had been washed away from that inflow from the ball field and had, you know, now the muck problem had disappeared. And that was a few years ago. That was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But I can tell you for the residents in that south part of that Bullfield Cove, we've never been without muck. I can take you out. I've offered this many times. Nobody ever takes me up on it, but I'll walk you right out from my shore out until almost the entrance to the main lake going through the cove. And there's a foot and a half of muck there. I don't know what the probing is showing, but you know, it's a foot and a half easy. And when we were watching the hydro raking and the removal of the sediment, you know, once they couldn't rake the leaves up, I don't understand, you know, okay, well, that was part of the cost of this. Well, then, you know, they determined that they're just going to treat that next season. Okay. But shouldn't that cost be recouped in a way? And some of the equipment, you know, listen, they know their business better than I do, but it's just some of the equipment they use to scoop up muck. Anybody that's ever tried to rake their shorefront or take out the weeds or get rid of the muck knows that you can't shovel this stuff out. You know, it just slips right off the shovel or it slips out through the rake and you've got just cloudy water. So I'm not sure, you know, there was some talk of other treatment options if this didn't work, such as, you know, there's a lot of pellet systems that once thrown into water, you know, enzymes that'll treat muck when there's large concentrations. And there's some other, I'm sure, cutting edge technologies. But when we watched where the raking ended and started, and I have, you know, I do have cameras so I can see from my yard to the water. They went halfway through my property and toward the ball field, but they never went in, to my knowledge, the deepest part of that cove area, which is to the right of where I am. And that's where you can't walk in that water. You just can't. That's where the leeches are. That's where everything else is. So, you know, I'm just a little befuddled when I hear a 20 by 20 area or 30 by 30 area where, you know, I'm sorry, Aquatic determined that there was a patch of muck that size. Boy, if they're using that measurement, they're not informed because it is not a 20 by 20 or 30 by 30 area in the cove. It is a quite large area. It is quite deep. And if those poles aren't working, maybe there's something else we should try.
Larry?
Okay, well, the first point about this is I'm not part of your committee. I'm a contractor. So when I went out with Bruce, I guess you guys are on the committee and the board. How did you notify people around the lake, telling that you're going to be basically hydroraking this? And if people are concerned about hydroraking, was there notice given out? Let us know what areas to be done, because that area that gentleman's talking about, I know the area, but that was not part of the, if you want to say, the target area that we're told to go after. So we had specific areas. So
If I could, I'm sorry, if I could just jump in and give you a little information on that. Everyone was told to get their docks and their boats out of the water. Everyone. There wasn't certain addresses. I know some addresses on the East Shore got notices that they were going to be part of the project, and yet West Shore, I never got any notice. And, you know, there were people, we wound up with a neighbor whose dock was still in the water, and we pulled his dock out of the water. He didn't even know. Because they said, hey, everybody get your equipment out of the way so they can get in here and get real close to the shore. And we wound up pulling his dock out for him, and wound up, they never did his property anyway. So, you know, that's another thing. I mean, I'm sorry I don't want to pile on and be my last comment, but when they do treat, they don't get in close enough to shore. If you've got even lily pads, they don't get in close to shore. So you wind up with 10 to 15 feet of shoreline lily pads that airboat will never get to.
let me
Bruce,
just,
you wanna-
I know we're diverting from the subject, but depending on what herbicide you use, you don't have to get right on top of them to get them. Certain chemicals you have to spray right on top of them, other ones you don't. So I disagree with your comment there about you can't get close enough and you can't do that. You know, what I'd like to do is, if we're going to go out there and your area is slated to do lily pads in 2022, I'd like to coordinate that you're right, and I'll show you what we can do. Because I want to make sure we have good communication. You're paying for our service. So that's why I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you. But, you know, let's address that area.
Bruce, you want to chime in on how areas were selected that were supposed to be done?
Yeah, first, John, you're at 107 West Shore, correct?
It's Bill, yes.
Bill, I'm sorry, Bill. Larry, just so you understand, Bill's house, from when we started hydro raking the first day in that cove where they were working on that leaking oil tank,
Yes.
his house is the fourth house to the right. So we did probe that area and we did hydro rake that area. That was where we started. We actually started there, and when we had time left over on the last day, we went back there and spent a couple more hours before we jumped over to somewhere else. So that area was definitely done. As far as giving people notice, all of the areas that we probed, and then I did a drone aerial shots of the lake, and I gave Larry a markup, or gave Larry pictures of the lake, of the areas we were going to work on. He marked them up, and then after he marked them up, the areas that we were going to do, we notified those homeowners, and if they were not home, we left notices at their house, but we tried our best to hand deliver notices to everybody for the areas that we're going to work in so that they could remove their docks. But that area that you keep questioning, Bill, was definitely done. It was done at the very beginning and the very last day of the project.
Okay. I want to try and move it on. We got a lot of people to get to. Ron, you're underneath CLCC. Ron Spahalski, do you have anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Someone is as an iPhone. I don't know who that is. You're unmuted, so not sure who would that be. Okay, John Nelson, do you have anything? Okay, nothing from John Nelson. Joe Carbone.
Yeah, Bob, thank you. I guess Larry, we met a few times after and before the hydro raking. And I understand that a project has a vision. A project has an assumption of what we can do. I know you went out there and we had to change directions due to not being able to get some of the lily pads, not being able to do what we forecasted or visioned. I get that. I think what I'm looking forward to now going forward is what do we do for 2022, which you mentioned. We do employ Aquatic Analysis to let us know what we should be doing, what lily pads we should be selectively harvested or killed or what have you. So, I mean, it's not much Crandon Lakes telling you what to do. We're looking to working with you where you can advise us what to do. The committee is whatever, and we need to meet a little bit more and partner with you. Also looking forward to developing a 5-year plan in which the lake has evolved. What we did 20 years ago doesn't seem to be working now. We got a lot more organic waste in the bottom. We're talking about possibly organic pellets of some sort, possibly some kind of aeration. I think we're looking at those. We want to include you with that. We look forward to doing that as well. But I think what we need to do is kind of focus within our means, as also looking for your counsel to bring us as a committee to make some decisions with the different representatives of lake use, boaters, fishermen, so forth and so on, so we can work together. So, I mean, did we get what we looked for? No, we didn't. Did we expect that this lake would be 100% clean after one mission of hydro raking? No, we didn't. However, this is just the beginning of a project, and I think it's a long-term plan that we need to develop, whether it be 5 years, 7 years, or whatever. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'm looking forward to keep working on the lake, but we have no choice.
Okay. Susan Henson?
Ensign.
Henson, okay.
Ensign.
Do you have a,
Yes, I do. I was one of the homeowners who was notified that hydro waking would take place in front of my home. It was never done. The boat was never near our home. And I have to say that my family on the other side of the lake, that their homes were also not done. We were led to believe that the muck would be removed and that the concentration would be on the weeds in the lake, not just the lily pads. When you are on a boat on the lake in the middle of the summer, you can actually see the weeds in the lake while you're riding in the boat. They're so high, and that's in the middle of the lake. So we need to address this problem. I am not happy with the hydro raking project that was done. I think we spent a lot of money and did not get what we paid for. So I want to know where going forward, what we can do so that the issue that the homeowners are having on the lakefront can be addressed and go forward.
okay, we will be addressing as we move forward tonight with other things, but let me keep moving forward. Phone number 201-310-2479. It doesn't come up as a name. Okay, Mary, how do you pronounce your name? Sheffield?
Are you talking about me, Caulfield
Yeah.
family?
Yeah, that's it. Mary.
Yeah. Okay, I'm on the West Shore, down past Bill McCann. I'm 103 West Shore, heading towards where the people had the oil leak. I watched them rake, and they came down from Carbone's to Rich's house to half of Bill's house, McCann's, where the stream comes in. They stopped right a little bit after the stream. I walked over to the guys in the boat and said, will you be doing the cove further down to my house, which is 103? And they said yes. And then they were raking. And then I asked, will they be coming to the shore? Because the lake never notified me to pull out my dock. And they said, yes, we're coming up to your shore. So my next door neighbor, Cardinal's dock was in, and my dock was still in, and I have a huge wooden dock. We pulled out Cardinal's dock and we cut up our whole wooden dock. They never came to our shore. They never hydro rigged. We were up there. We watched them. They would scoop 4 scoops, put it in the flat boat, and then take off on the to the other side of the lake, come back, scoop up another 4 scoops, go back to the other side of the lake. They did that for 2 days, went back to the east shore, never came back to our shore. I stopped and asked somebody on the board on Logwood Trail, aren't they going to do our cove here? And he said, no, your cove is not designated. I said, well, we just cut up our huge dock, because when I asked the guys on the boat if they were coming to us, and they told us yes, now we cut up a whole dock, and they said, no, we're not. Then when we asked someone on the lake, on the board, they said, no, they're not doing your area. And we are 103, where a few houses from where that oil tank is. And we watched for 2 to 3 days where they were and what they were doing. And it was quite, quite annoying. And that's quite a bit of an expense for us when we were told, yes, they're coming to my shoreline. And we end up removing a big dock there was no need to. So quite disappointed, yeah.
Okay, Nancy's iPhone. That's what it comes up on my screen. Nancy? All right, Michelle Ryan? All right, Carolyn. Anything from Carolyn? Peter Sims? Oh, nope, go ahead, Carolyn. You just popped on.
Yeah, this is Carolyn's husband. This is Ken.
Okay.
Ken Caulfield from 70 East Shore Drive. I don't have so much of an issue, and I understand there are problems on the ball field cove, but we've lived here for 13 years now, and this past summer is the first time that we've had serious problems with lilies and seaweed in front of my place. So my concern is going forward, how we're going to address that. In addition to that, and I know it's a side note, I had complained in the beginning of the season. I live in a little bit of a cove, and every log that's floating in the lake ends up in front of my house. And I had asked a couple of people what we would be doing about it. And it was never really addressed. And I still have that problem. So that's another issue I would like to deal with going forward. That's what I got to say.
Okay. Okay. As for the log thing, I can answer that. If something pops up in front of somebody's house, do what you can to get it out, because all of our members, our maintenance, it's all volunteer. So any help that can be done is greatly appreciated. There's a lot. Can you mute your getting a lot of feedback.
I don't know how to.
There you go. We ask anybody that has anything like that, if it pops in front of your house, see if you can get it out or call somebody that can help you get it out, because we're tied up doing other things, our own thing, our own family life. So we're all volunteers trying to do this, and we ask for any help that we can get. Peter Sims, do you have anything?
No, wait a second. I'd like to stay on that log thing. I pull out every log that I possibly can, but there were two huge ones in front of my house. And I actually tied them up so they wouldn't float into the lake. And then they became my problems. I could have easily just pushed them out and have them be somebody else's problem. But that's not the right thing to do. So I had asked assistance from the lake to help me. And I got none. So that's still an issue. I still have the two logs in front of my house. But again, I know this is a side issue, and I'd like to bring it up after the fact.
Okay. Peter Sims, do you have anything? Okay. Chris B.
Hear me now, guys?
Yeah, I can hear you, Pete.
Okay,
Go ahead.
sorry, I drifted a little way down the line there, but I mean, I've been here my whole life as well. Okay, the cove used to be immersed in lily pads. I think the Crandon company like put a road around it and dredged it out. And it's been 50 years, you know what I mean, without much attention, I'm thinking. That, you know, you mentioned some other things like Lower Lake, Plymouth Lake, and such. But what I think also just like more recent is the what do you call the hydro raking started like kind of late in the year when the pads were already dying, you know what I mean? So I felt like that maybe the effectiveness of that hydro raking you know could have been, you know, more cost effective. Maybe we just start up a little earlier on this.
Larry, can you just touch base real quick on the timing of the year, why the project was done at the time it was?
Correct. Okay, it's easy. What happens right now is when we're hydro raking, we have big equipment getting to shallow waters, pulling organic material up. When we pull organic material up, it gets resuspended back in the water column. And when we resuspend it back up in the water column, there's a good chance of reloading the water column with phosphorus and nitrogen. If we do it too early in the season, that can stimulate and fuel algae. And what we're concerned about is not just regular good, the green algae, the brown algae. We're looking at the harmful, the blue-green algae, the ones you hear about when they shut lakes down. So you have the harmful blue-green algae in your lake, okay? We treat for them at times. At times, they're right at the borderline, and what we look at is if it's at the borderline, we treat. If we do it too early in the season, when the waters are cool, sun's high in the sky, we would basically stimulate an algal bloom. So we would be hydro raking, and guess what? We'd have the water pea green, we'd have to treat with copper sulfate. So what we're doing is we wait until the water cool down, okay, where the waters get below 60 degrees or in the 60-degree range, where they're not the ideal habitat for your blooms. So that's the reason for it. The justification is so we don't stimulate any harmful blue greens. Those are the algae that I'm talking about, the blue greens. If people are not aware, those are the ones that are shutting lakes down for being harmful to dogs, all vertebrate and mammals. So that's the justification for that. And that's the only justification for it. We used to do that early in the season. With that, we look at the lakes, and now we change our strategy around.
Okay. Billy Rowan.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you, Billy.
I have a couple of questions. Larry mentioned earlier that for next year, he has a herbicide that will kill the water lilies and kill them all the way down to the root and get rid of them. Why wasn't that done earlier this summer? When the cove, you couldn't take your pontoon boat out without having to stop and clear the prop. Did he wait until the fall to take care of those lily pads?
Larry?
Okay, the goal was when we're looking at treating, okay, it was to hold off until we do the hydro raking project. Okay, when we did our probing survey, we didn't do the probing survey. It was right around Labor Day weekend is when we did the probing survey. So we waited to that period of time to do that. If we would have done the probing survey earlier in the season and realized we've done that, we could have done the hydro raking the lily pads. We probably could have went in and used herbicide on that. But the goal was to hydrate those lily pads.
Why didn't you treat them during the summer to kill them ahead of time, which would have eliminated the hydro raking?
Because the goal from the association was to go in there and hydrate to pull them out with the organic material.
So you let them grow in order to hydro rake.
Yes.
That's irresponsible.
Well, the lily pads are there. So by growing, they didn't expand exponentially from letting them go for this year. They don't grow that fast. The ones that were there will be there in the spring, in the summer of 2022. So we did not treat that. We treated in the past, you know, several years ago, we went and spot sprayed lily pads throughout the lake. Okay, we've done that for several years. The goal for 2021 was to hydrate the lily pads out. And
So you're saying you let them grow?
we let them grow. We did not treat them. Our goal was to go in there and hydrate it.
Here's another question. With your hydro raking system, whatever, how many truckloads of material did you promise the lake and how many were actually removed?
Well, I never really promised the lake anything in that. I gave them an estimate. In 2020, in the fall, late summer, we met under the pavilion and they're talking about hydro raking. And they asked me about hydro raking, and it's on average, we take out around 500 to 1,000 cubic yards. And that's what we're hoping to, proposing at that time. That was before any type of hydro raking. And that was explained in the proposal that it's all variables come into place.
And how many did you actually remove?
How many what was removed?
You mentioned 500 to 1,000.
You're asking how many yards were removed from the lake?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm trying to clarify so I can give you a right answer. You're talking about yards, cubic yards?
Well, whatever, you mentioned 500 to 1,000.
Okay, so we took out approximately 312 cubic yards of material was removed from the lake.
So you fell far below what you estimated,
Correct.
yet the payment was still for the full amount?
Correct.
Do you think maybe that's not appropriate?
Well, let me explain this to you. I'll do it one more time, and please listen to what I have to say. When I talked about that was in the fall. It was either August or September of 2020. Okay, we sent a proposal to you in the spring of 2021. So when we talked about it in August, September of 2020, we did not probe your lake to see what the organic material was. So we had no idea about the organic buildup in your lake. Okay, when we survey your lake every 2 weeks, we don't go in there and probe your whole lake every 2 weeks. Okay, we concentrate on aquatic vegetation in your lake. We concentrate on the oxygen in your water, the algae in your water, and we target on the management of aquatic vegetation. This hydro raking is a whole different management program. So when we talked about it initially under the pavilion, it was being preliminary, just chatter talk of what was going on. At that time, you didn't say you were going to do it. We were just talking about it. So when we basically sent a proposal, the proposal was we gave an hourly basis, a daily basis cost of all our equipment. That's why when we did this, I spent my own time with Bruce. I said, Bruce, listen, we're going to do this. We're going to get out in late summer to do a probe, find out all the areas, association, what areas we're going to key in on. Bruce got all that information. We then went out in the boat and we probed those areas. At the time, we found out that the lake was firm. There were some soft areas where there's some good organic material. And then we came up with a plan. And that's what we implemented at that time. So when you say it's not what I expected, I didn't expect anything in 2020 when we met underneath that pavilion. I was giving you some information at that time. So the true information was when we did the probing survey. You know, maybe when we did the probing survey, you know, again, you have a committee, you have a committee, you have a board. You know, at that time, when we did this probing, maybe at that time, you know what? If it was your decision that, you know what, we're not going to be able to do it, we should have stopped the program at that time. I look at it as right now, as an aquatic ecologist, this is our 39th year in business right now. Okay. We took out 312 cubic yards of material. Do you have any, does anyone listening to this, maybe Joe might have an idea what's going on here. Do you have any idea what 312 cubic yards of material is? Does anyone have any concept of what that, how much material that is out of a lake? You say 500 to 1,000. That's like talking about we're in debt trillions and trillions of dollars in our country. You don't know what $1 trillion is. I don't know what $1 trillion is. So when you're talking about 500 yards to 1,000 yards of material, do you have any concept of what 312 cubic yards of material is? That is a significant amount of organic material coming out of your lake. That gentleman talked about a couple of logs in his shoreline area. Okay. Just think about 312 cubic yards of material coming out of your lake. When you look at something like that, I believe it was something like, I'd have to calculate it out. How many tandem truckloads came out of your lake?
24 tandem loads.
20, thank you.
24
tandem truckloads coming out of your lake. That's a significant amount of material that forms internal load of nutrients in your lake. That one gentleman said he lived on his lake his whole life and he's seen the changes in the lake. That internal load of nutrients is due to that organic material. Okay, just to give you a heads up, organic material is any material that's living. If you have a garden at home and you compost, okay, you're composting with organic material. You compost with organic material, you're gonna have a fertile garden. You have organic material in your lake, you're gonna have a fertile lake. So by taking out 312 cubic yards of material, besides just looking at the biomass, the pile of material that came out of there, the amount of phosphorus, the amount of nitrogen that was removed in that is a significant amount of internal load of nutrients coming out. Besides that, what's happening is bacteria during the summertime in the shallow waters, that organic material, it starts to heat up, it starts to break down. There's bacteria. The one gentleman talked about putting pellets in there. I think it was you, Joe. I'm not sure, but someone talked about pellets, about breaking down the organic material. Yes, bacteria breaks down organic material. It turns leaf litter into black muck. Okay, when that process goes through, it's called respiration. Okay, what it does is it takes oxygen that's dissolved in the water. Okay, absorbs that, converts it with CO2, carbon dioxide. The photosynthetic equation for plants to take on photosynthesis is plants have to take in CO2. What's happening is that organic material stimulates, fuels harmful algal blooms. So taking that type of material out was very, very beneficial to the long-term health of your lake. Was there more in the lake in other areas? Yes, there might have been more areas. We didn't know those areas. I wish those people would have contacted the committee and let us know that, and we would have probed those areas and concentrated on that. Because I look at it right now is the reason we keyed on these areas is they had a significant amount of material, 1.5 foot of material. We did some of your shoreline areas, okay? I think it was done for, excuse me for this, but I think it was done for more of a political issue, okay? I like to look at things where when we're hydrating, let's get out the maximum amount of material as possible. In some of the shoreline areas we're going, there was 6 inches, less than 1 foot of material, and we had to stockpile it to get it up out of the lake. That one gentleman said that you look at it's really soupy material. The state of New Jersey does not allow us to take our hydro rake and dredge with the lake. We are allowed to use a rake. Okay, so what we use is a rake. We try stockpiling it. We try making it like a beaver lodge. So it dries out, it desiccates, it condenses. So when we come and load that material up, we get a bigger scoop of material coming out of the lake. So what I'm trying to let you know is, yes, we didn't get what we're hoping to do 1.5 years ago, but we still got a significant amount of material out of the lake. I'm not sure if I answered your question, sir.
How many years have you been treating Crandon Lakes?
I would say we've been treating where when you had ownership of the lower Crandon Lake, okay, we used to treat the main lake and the lower lake. It was way before your dam. I would say, you have to excuse me, I'm getting up there in age right now, but I would say it's probably been at least 15 years or greater, 20 years.
So you should be familiar with the entire lake and the probing and everything, correct?
Why would it be? Well, that's what I just said. I guess you didn't hear me. I said,
Oh, I
we
heard
don't
you.
on your lake to do the probing, okay? We look at areas that we're looking for weed and algae growth. I can't sit there and probe your whole lake. So no, but I know in certain areas, the reason I know we had areas to areas, we have airboats that only draw inches of water. And that one gentleman said we weren't getting close to a shoreline area. We get as close as we can to the shoreline area. I run aground a lot on your lake, okay? But we're only in 6 inches of water at times, okay? When I make a turn with that airboat, okay, and I make a turn, I look what happened when I made that turn. And when I turn and I stir up all this organic material, black organic material comes out, I know that there's a buildup of organic material there. That's why when I talked to Bruce, when we went out probed, I said, these are areas that I see we have an issue. The one area, the southwest portion of the ball field cove, okay, there was a good correlation between us turning that area over and having organic material. I believe it was not this past year, the year before, we had blue-green slicking, a blue-green algal bloom that was stimulated in that area. So that internal load of that organic material that was breaking down, that was absorbing the oxygen out of the water, dissolved oxygen out of the water, putting CO2 in place, okay, along with the nitrogen and phosphorus that's getting released from the breakdown, was stimulating a blue-green algal bloom. So from an ecologist and a lake manager, I think we did a great job in that area because now we got rid of the organic material. We got rid of the culprit, one of the culprits. Now you still have culprits. Everyone who lives on that lake is a culprit for what's going on ecologically in your lake. I know I'm getting off the sub here, but you have stormwater, you have septics, you have fertilizers, okay? But this is internal. When you're hydroraking, you're going to the internal load of nutrients out of your lake. You guys living on the shoreline area is external loading. So by taking all this internal load out, we restored this lake back. I'm not sure how long that organic materials is present in some of those coves. I would guesstimate 10 to 15 to 20 years. So we restored certain parts of your lake 15 to 20 years from getting all that leaf litter out. That leaf litter, if you look at leaves, okay, and it starts down, you start seeing a change color. It starts breaking into small little pieces. Then when you look at some of this organic material, you can't tell it was a plant unless you look at the microscope. So that stuff's been completely decomposed. And when that was removed from your lake. So again, I'm hoping I got off a little bit on a tangent, but I'm hoping that I answered your question. If I didn't, just ask and I'll fill in with some more of your answers to your question.
Let me try and move along here. I still have a couple more people to get to and try and finalize this. Debbie Cook.
Yeah, hi. Now, I just want to thank Larry for all the work he's done. I think there's been a lot of good comments. I'm actually looking forward to seeing how the lake is going to fare this spring with all the biomass he has taken out. And I think we need to just improve our communications.
Okay. Nancy Delaney or Bobby Delaney?
Hi, it's Nancy.
Okay.
It looks like the front, we're at 149 West Shore Drive. So the second house as you come in, the blue one, as you come in to the right side entrance of the lake. It looks like the front of our property was done. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing what it looks like in spring and hopeful that, you know, at least part of the job was accomplished. I'm sorry that it seems that some people aren't happy with the outcome, but hopefully this can be the beginning of a restorative process for the lake. And thank you for all who are involved in doing it.
Dennis Jones?
Yeah, I kind of want to second exactly what was just said with the two other callers. I think it's a long-term project, so having results immediately, I think will happen. But we're looking for a long-term solution on how to effectively not only just support the native fishery, but to also include everybody enjoying the lake. You know, within the boat. So it's a tough balance between it all, but I think we will accomplish it. And thanks so much, Larry, and the rest of the Lake Committee for stepping up and taking full charge of this project.
All right, John Malmadeer. Anything from John Malmadeer?
Yeah, I'm here, Bob. Listen, I'm in a truck driving right now. I was just, listening in on everything, but I can't really talk right now, though. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else that they want to say where I might have missed them, or anybody? All right.
Oh, wait, can I say something? My family, I'm a Caulfield. My family's been on the lake for 51 years. We were down at the little lake. I purchased my lakefront home 18 years ago. I have to say, now growing up on the lake and never we had lily pads. 18 years I've owned my lakefront home. Every year it gets worse and worse. I was actually the one who sent the pictures of the blue-green algae. Now I can't even swim on my lakefront property. So even though we have the treatment going on, it's getting progressively worse over the years. And, so I have actually seen the deterioration of the lake, through the years. So that's what's quite disappointing, because we didn't used to have a company years ago, and now we have the company. And it just seems to get worse and worse.
Okay. I saw Michelle Ryan, you just popped on a different screen here. Do you have anything you want to add in, Michelle?
Yeah, I had a little trouble with my computer. I could hear, but I couldn't chime in before.
Yeah, I kind of figured that.
I just wanted to thank Larry and the rest of the committee, and just say that I look forward to us creating a plan for this upcoming summer, because actually it was me who had the concern about the lily pads, because I knew we had let them grow, hoping we would be able to harvest them. So I really do have very much a concern, and it helped me to hear you say, Larry, that they actually don't grow that fast. So I feel like we will be able to get a handle on the lily pads. I also fish, so the fishery is very important to me as well. And I do think we should selectively take them. And I look forward to working with you, Larry, and possibly exploring some other avenues for our lake to help restore it. I mean, I think a lot of what the people are saying is our lake is aging and we want to try and restore it. It's a natural process that happens. And I think that this project was a good start in restoration.
Bruce, do you have anything else you want to add to this?
Yeah, I just want to follow up with what Michelle just said. When we had one of our meetings with Larry, and what I've experienced in my life and being on the lake and living on different lakes is the lake is a living organism, just like we are. And just like when we age, things change, things get worse, we get unhealthy. You got to think of the lake that it's the same thing. And we just need to continue to try to do our best to work with the lake, work with nature, and just understand that, the lake is going to change from year to year. I mean, the way the weather is changing. I mean, we might be in for some drastic changes in the lake in the future with the way the weather patterns are going. So I just would hope that everybody would be understanding that the lake is a living organism, and we just need to work with it and try to keep it healthy to the best we can.
Okay. I want to touch on a couple quick things with Larry. From hearing a lot of the comments, hearing directly firsthand from yourself and knowing what was brought to the board and done at board meetings, I think moving forward, the biggest issue for me is communication. I think there was a breakdown on communication, that things need like you said, if that whole part would have come through, that you found out after probing the lake that you weren't going to get out, that maybe we reassess the hydro raking end of it, and that wasn't discussed. So there needs to be a little bit more communication. You might need to pop in on more of our meetings or meet more with the committee that has been expanded with Joe Carbone, Debbie, and Michelle Ryan and Bruce, that you guys meet more often to discuss the health of the lake and options of where we're going to go forward with this. I know halfway through, when the probing was done, the expectation was still in the range of 500 to 1,000 cubic yards. I feel we fell way short of that. 300 and some odd yards. Yes, we did get out some. We were expecting a lot more. We were hoping for a lot more. We have a lot of residents that were hoping that we would have gotten this out to help them out, help the lake out. But moving forward, we need to do more on the communication end.
Well, I agree on that. I look at it as, I don't live on your lake. I'm called in and I evaluate the lake. I'm there for the lake's best interest. But I heard a lot of people talking today about, the weeds around their shoreline area, what's going on, about the muck in their shoreline area. I would recommend that communication to either put it in writing, email the committee, get in contact with the committee, so there's a track record of it, and then we meet. I'm there to manage the ecosystem. As the one gentleman said, it's one challenge for us to balance your lake ecosystem. The most challenging part of our business is to balance the lake ecosystem to the association, because everyone's different. People want to fish, people want to swim. And the only way to do this is to have good communication. So I'm an advocate of what you're saying. Let's have the best communication as possible. Not a neighbor, I don't live right next to you, but our office is in Stillwater. I live up in Sandiston. I drive by your lake twice a day. So, if there's something going on, call Bruce, and, let's meet on it, I mean, Bruce asked me to meet around the holidays and we met. And I have no problems meeting with people when they're close to go over, any type of concerns that people have. So that's what I'm here for.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything else they want to add?
Bobby, this is Joe. I got a question to the general audience and the effort of improving communications. I'd like to know how people were informed of this Skype call or this Zoom call.
I can answer that. What happened was we're having issues with our website. So Paul, over the years, has been getting emails. We always ask people for their emails. So when he sends out an email, when it comes from CLCC or it comes from Paul, he sends it out to the whole contact list. You don't see that contact list because it's a private list that you'll only see your name as the recipient. But I know that the email went out in regards to the Zoom meeting. That's
Yeah,
how-
I got the email, but I guess I'll pose the question directly to Susan, to Mary, to Carolyn. How did you get it? Did you get it by word of mouth? Did you get it by the email list? Did you get it by the Facebook blast?
I got it by, this is Susan. I got it by the email list, and I also got the notification through the Crandon Lakes website.
Oh,
Okay.
you got it off the website? Because I couldn't get it off of there because we're still having.
Yeah, no,
issues.
I had seen it on the website a few days ago,
Okay,
and that was sent when somebody updated the website. There was an update, and I get the updates. So that was my first notification, and then I got the notification through Paul's email list.
okay.
Okay, all right. Mary, I see you nodding your head as well. That same for
Same.
you? Okay.
Yeah, but plus, we have numerous family on the lake, and so they sent out a text to the family.
Okay, because I'm sensing some word of mouth. I know, coming across, across from me, word of mouth gets intent misconstrued or whatever. I mean, coming back to me was lake dredging, and they're going to lower the lake, they're going to dredge the lake, or what have you. People asking me about this, and I just wanted to. I think communications is key. I think maybe the Paul email blast is probably the vehicle that we'll use in the future from a committee point of view. Once it's approved by Bruce and the board.
Well, we do have John Malmadeer runs on the Facebook, the Crandon Lakes Then and Now. So Jen has our Crandon Lakes Country Club Facebook page. She'll put posts on there. She also does our email, our web page. But like I said, we're having issues with that. So fortunately, John had posted that on the Crandon Lakes Then and Now. So we are getting the word out for the people that don't have Facebook. They're getting the emails. We're doing the best we can to notify everyone.
All right, thank you, Bob.
Okay, Paul, I saw you just popped in. We're pretty much wrapping up the meeting here.
Okay.
I don't know, did you have anything? I know you weren't in on the meeting, so you don't know exactly what took place, but
No, I'm just wondering, was it a productive meeting? Is Larry still here?
yeah, Larry's still here.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a productive meeting. A lot of residents. I think at one point we were up to 29 people were on the thing.
Okay.
It was productive. We didn't discuss the financial ends because we can't as part for the lawyer, but everything else was discussed.
Okay.
And Paul, I think Larry said he was going to issue every board member a lily pad lapel pin plated in gold.
Okay. That should solve everything, I think, right? So I'm assuming as we get more information, we're going to disseminate it to the community, put out in the community once we get, I guess, more of I guess Larry went over his report, but a preliminary report, right?
He gave a whole report of the procedure that took place.
Right.
There were a lot of questions about, areas that weren't done. And that comes down to a communication issue.
Okay,
There were some concerns with the upcoming year with lily pads, if we've done more damage than
right.
good.
Bob,
That was
Bob?
addressed. Yes,
I'm gonna take off. I don't have to go over the whole thing again. All right,
Okay.
thank you very much.
all right, Tom. Like I said, my whole concern was I don't think that we got what we paid for, but you know, that's, yeah. We
Hey,
move forward
Paul,
from here.
Paul, I record the whole meeting for you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank
Oh, you were able to record that?
Yeah, I asked that earlier if we can get this recorded.
Okay, well, that's good then.
I know I think April sent something out. She was wondering if the residents can make it available to the residents. I guess I don't see a problem with that. We should probably talk about that.
This meeting was open to all the residents, so it should be opened up if
Okay.
somebody wants it.
Okay.
Does anybody else have anything else before we wrap this up? Because it's an hour and a half later.
Yeah, Bob, I would just like to thank Larry for all of his work and bearing with us and working with us. And we appreciate, you know, taking your time to meet with the committee and during the holidays, like you said, and also for taking your time to meet with us and the board and the community tonight. We just want to thank you for your time and your efforts.
Well, thank you.
Uh,
I look forward to working with you guys. Thank you.
Just real quick, Susan, I did get your message and I will pass that on to the committee that you would like to help out with that committee.
Thank you.
Okay, so Bruce, Michelle, Debbie, Joe Carbone, Susan, God, I don't want to mess up your name. Susan would like to be on the board for the committee for Lake Resource.
Lake Resources? Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, if she can just provide her contact information, we'll definitely get in touch with her.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, I'm ready to pop off.
Thanks for running the meeting, Bob. Sorry I couldn't get here,
All right,
but thank you.
all right.
All right,
Okay.
take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
Appreciate it.
folks.
Thanks,
Bobby.
everybody.
Thanks, Larry.